Hi, this is Sleep Skies, and in this video I'm going to be taking you through my track Reverence, out now on No Place Like Home, and showing you exactly how I made it. Let's jump into the project. Okay, we're in the project now. Here we are, just having a little listen through. I'll just take you through the overall song first of all, just in case you haven't heard before. We've got here a nice little intro. This is the main melodic motif. It's quite drifty, sort of nice melodic house track. And then let's play through some of the parts. We've got this kind of the main groove, and then there's a nice drop and breakdown. Pianos and some strings. And then that all builds up. We get this drop. That kind of releases, and then back into the main groove. And then we have like a kind of a little counter melody at the end. That kind of sees the track out to the outro. So, now that you get a sense for what's in it, let's talk through how we put it together. So I'm going to, the structure of my tracks is always kind of the same. Let's move some of this stuff out of the way so we can focus on the actual track itself. So the structure of my projects is always quite similar. I've got a bunch of lead elements up here that I'm processing separately. Then I've got this melodics section here, which is all the kind of background harmonic, kind of drifty atmospheric stuff. I've got my drums, which is split into core drums and FX. So those two elements. And then I've got a low end section here, which is my kick and my bass. And of course you could process your kick with your drums. I choose not to. I like to process the low end altogether. So let's jump in and see what's there. Let's start with the fundamental sort of building blocks of the track. We've got the kick here, which is really actually very simple. It's a sample here from a PML pack, I think. Oh no, actually this is one of the kick samples from Radiance, my own sample pack. This is the kick 2, it's in it. I use this kick a lot, to be honest with you, a real go-to kick. And we've got some gentle, these kicks have all been processed quite a lot already. They've got compression on, they've got EQ on. That's all the kicks from Radiance are already kind of pretty much good to go. So this has just had a little bit of EQing just to help it sit in the track. So there's a little bit of a boost around 93 hertz just to help it cut through, and a little bit of cutting there around the 300 hertz mark just to kind of stop some mud clashing. And then other than that, it's there's this EQ is just doing a little bit of automation. You can see it's just cutting some of the low end out in parts. But that is there. That is good to go, that kick. And then we're going to process that here. Let's have a look at, actually we'll do the drums first and we'll get them done, and then we'll jump into the bass line. So drums, I'll loop this section here, because this has got quite a lot of drums happening. So you can see there's it's quite an interesting drum groove. It's got quite a lot going on there. So what's happening in here? We've got some claps, and that's a bunch of samples here. This is a whole load of layered claps. You can see here how many layers are going into this. There is, let's just get this back. So we've got, bit annoying. So we've got this one, which is kind of a little clap thing. You've got that. Really frustrating. Why? Okay, I'm gonna just show you a different one. Maybe I solo that actually. Yeah, that's better. So we got a little clap there. We've got. So we've got some stuff in there that's kind of just almost like ear candy-ish. Got this little sort of 909 style snare. I use this in quite a lot of my tracks. You can see the difference, like, without it. It seems to immediately give any claps or any snares a little bit more energy, which I quite like. You don't have to do it, but. And that's one that's not that one's not happening on every beat. That's kind of on every second beat. And then there's another little snare for that hit. I like the hiss of that snare. So you can see quite a big layer being run through some overdrive, vocoder, just to give a little bit of like more noisy hiss. This is the Audio Tent Axis plugin, adding some compression, drive, and a little bit of room reverb, and then some EQ and a bit of compression there just to kind of tighten it all up at the end. Nice, barely, sort of basically just letting through the transient of the attack. Quite a quick release, not too much ratio, so it's quite a gentle bit of compression, just kind of affecting some of the immediate transient there, just after the transient. Okay, good. The other thing I've added to this is this wide clap, which together just give the sense that it's got a bit of width. That's basically a little basic waves clap that already had quite a lot of width on it. It was a sample that was already wide, and it just meant that the whole thing has a little bit of width to it, which is quite nice. And then the other thing in the clap is this. Should be a snare sample, that one. Yeah, it's a one-shot snare sample, but it's a reverse snare, so you can hear that it's got this vroom into the fourth one. So every fourth beat had this kind of vroom, and that just gives it this kind of sense of, if I play that in context. So it's quite subtle, but it's just moving you into the final beat of each bar. It just gives you a bit more movement. I like to do that little reverse in a lot of those. There's quite a lot going on in those claps. So you can see then, like, layering is a really nice way to get this really kind of full, energetic sounding clap. And it's worthwhile spending time on things like a clap and a hi-hat. Like, spend time on that, because that is the building blocks of the track. So then, if we go way down here, we've got this little loop. And I think there's another loop here, maybe. Oh, that's actually a little sample. It's just some percussions, little percussive elements. Got a little bongo. So we've got this kind of little, quite subtle percussion that's kind of working with that loop. So this loop, which is one from a Bunker pack, I think it's called Bunker. This one is giving us some groove. That's really helping the groove along. So quite often we'll layer loops in just to give you some groove. This is a nice, like, swingy hat groove. And then this is the main hat. And we've got there a little short hi-hat. That's the main shaker. Some little shaker outside. And then a kind of a... You can hear that. It's kind of doing the... Kind of got this metronomic sort of feel to it. Then there's some little... These little ghost hats. These are really low in the mix, if you can hear. hear them, but they're constantly going to be adding groove because they've got this kind of like, when you're doing these, it's worthwhile looking at things like velocity. So this pattern immediately gets more interesting because of velocity. Like if I just take the velocity off, see, Emma, it just sort of comes to life when you add the velocity in. So just think about changing the velocity of some of these hits to kind of go like the way a real drummer would. They'd be kind of like emphasizing certain hits in the pattern. And then we've got some shakers here. A couple of shaker loops just working with each other. One's in kind of more central. One's a bit more panning, a bit more left. That means that you get this sense of like rhythm and kind of moving kind of in rhythm with one another. Both with this, I use this on a lot of my channels. This is just a sidechaining plugin called Kickstart. It makes sidechaining really quick and easy. But I'm just adding some sidechain to both of these shakers to give it that sense of rhythm and moving with the track. And then little kind of distant percussion element. Let's just give it a bit of sense of space. I think there's some more of that kind of thing here. Yeah, this is just another little kind of FX element to give it some space as well. This is nice. This is a kind of a big long open hat run through a vocoder, and then by changing the release of the vocoder, I can get this kind of nice wafting sort of feel, which all adds to, again, building up this groove in like lots and lots of nice little layers. And it's all quite subtle. And then a little tambourine, just because that cuts through, adds a lot of nice little detail to the top end. Again, a bit of vocoder on that, lots of EQ, and that's just kind of getting that top end through. Right, so that's what's going in. The drums, let's just do the effects channel. Effects channel, quite simple really. There's a bunch of transitions, which are mainly white noise. This sort of white effect here, which I've just recorded. I think I actually built that white noise sample just using a long hi-hat like this, and EQing it and then running it through a lot of vocoder and delay and reverb and all sorts, and just kind of then recorded that in so I could do I can then do a reverse of it and the main one down, so it just has that nice transition effect. And it just allows each section to move together. Then I've used this really lovely orchestral crash sample from the Kashmir kind of sample pack. I use this in a lot, maybe every track. It's just such a nice transition sample. It's just a bit nicer than a kind of a like clean crash. It's just got a bit more kind of subtlety to it. And then that's nice too. Tambourine with just a loaded delay on it. Again, from that same Kashmir, I think I'm saying that right, sample pack. And some Foley, which is just very quiet in the mix and kind of just barely hear that. Hear it if you... There you go. Just stop talking. But it's just adding some depth and grit and all the rest of those sorts of things, which just add more to the overall mix. Right, okay. All those drums are running through they've all been processed separately. So the core drums, I've got some EQ, I've got this saturation effect rack. So that's got a bunch of parallel saturation in it. So I've got Decapitator, which is awesome, and then Devil Lock as well. Both of those drums are running into that. Hang on if I can... So that's without any saturation. This is with the effect track, the Decapitator and Devil Lock. Just adding a little bit of brightness. You can go much more. You can go much more than this if you wanted to. You can add a lot more, but this has got quite a soft feel to it. This track, it's. I don't want too much kind of grittiness because it's quite a soft sounding record. And then I was also adding this Roar plugin, which is adding a little bit more again, especially to there's a bit of width in there too. I think that might just be a preset called Drum Bus Enhancer or something like that. It's a really nice preset. Running that through through Soothe. Here we go. Just to add some nice, take off any harshness on the top end, any things that spikes out, and then a filter which I'm just using kind of for automation. And then this is interesting. I was using, with this track, I ran an experiment to see if I could use this Neoverb AI-powered reverb all the way through. So the whole track has been made pretty much with Neoverb as the main reverb. And I've put some on top of this drum channel because I was finding it just wasn't really working so well when I put it through the buses. I wanted some directly on the channel. Very, very 10% wet. It's really, really not a lot because you don't want your drums to be washed in reverb. It gets messy. And it's kind of an interesting plugin. You can see, like, can really change the nature. I think it's like a kind of a convolution reverb and a whole reverb and a, so what is it, like early reflections, chamber and whole all kind of mixed together. And then you can do all sorts of stuff to the channel to EQ the reverb here, and so on. You can do some unmasking if you want to unmask, do that kind of thing where you kind of sidechain the channel. So it's very, very powerful and very versatile. That all said, I kind of, after I made this track, I bought Valhalla Vintage Verb, and I just kind of fell mad in love with the sound of it. So I don't use Neoverb that much. But I might go back to using it on some things like vocals and stuff where you want a little bit of help in getting the reverb settings right. But anyway, that is Neoverb. And then the whole thing, I've just added a little bit of EQ to the core drums. Oh yeah, sorry, on the end of that chain is some compression and limiting, as you'd expect. Just really taking off some of the little high sharp edges and keeping it under control. With a little bit of limiting. It's not even really hitting the limiter at this point. It's just there to make sure it doesn't go over that mark. And then the FX here is just going through that new, which is in a different setting. Obviously, I've used the AI to pick that setting out. Quite fun, just going AI. What setting do you want today? Right. So that's all drums. Hopefully that will make sense. All drums and kick. Let's have a look at the bass line, and then we'll get into the melodic elements. So this is the bass line is made up of 4 elements. Let's have a listen to it. What we've got a sub, which is like a real simple diva. What is this? Bound to Divide, Visions, BS sub 2. Yeah, nice preset from PML. Bound to Divide, pack, Visions. It's a cool pack, get it. And it's got a simple sub. And that's just kind of a sine wave. I've actually put a little arpeggiator on it, which is quite hard to hear. But I thought the way this track was shaping up, it kind of needed something to keep it feel like it was rolling forward. I was very conscious of, like, because the melody on this track, if you listen, is quite spread out. So because you've got this kind of long, expansive melody with big long notes in, you need the rest of some other melodic parts that have like rhythm to them. So I was adding that all the way through in little subtle ways, and one of them was adding an arpeggiator to this bass line. So it's not exactly a continuous note. And then some EQ to cut off all the bits I don't want, bottom and top. compression just to keep it under control, limiting to keep it completely under control. Like you'll see here, it is, boom, total 31.5 all the way through, never moves. So you've got total control over that sub, and then utility and some compression on the end. Okay, great. Then you've got these two basses here, and then a wide one. These two are kind of working together, almost like a layer, I think. This one is like, again, it's Diva. This is another one from the same sample pack called Simples. I've changed it quite a bit though. I've messed around with the envelope and the ADSR to kind of make us get a slightly different sound out of it. Saturator, bit of saturation, bit of decapitator, a little bit of width from Microshift, which is a widening plugin from Soundtoys, and then some chorus just to give it a little bit more subtle width. Because it's not down in the sub area, like you can see I'm cutting off everything on under 100 hertz there, but it's actually most of the focus for this sound is in this kind of space. The width isn't so much of a problem. You wouldn't want to be, I don't think you'd really want to be widening the sub. That's probably not a great idea. But in this area, you can add some width and it's not an issue for the bass line. And then there's lots of things like I'm putting a bit of filter on there to kind of help the bass kind of feel like there's just some automation all the way through, I think, on this. You can see it's just, the automation's kind of helping the bass line feel like it's growing and then shrinking down and growing again. So it's got a different tone to it over here. To here, you know. And then compression. Again, limiting to keep it fairly under control, but I didn't want to squash this one entirely because it's got that cutoff in it and the filter in it. You want to have some dynamics in there. You want to retain some dynamics. And then, so that was that one just on its own. And that's kind of it got a full body, that sound. This one, it's got a bit more, like some more harmonics on the top of it. Like it's in, I think it's got a little bit of detuning. And so we've got a few different oscillators working together. Some working much higher up the frequency range. A bit of detune so that it kind of, this one sounds a little bit off and a little bit detuned and a little bit, and then I've EQ'd out a bit more. There's some width on it, some more saturation, you know, a bit more micro shift for width. You can see it's quite wide actually. This plugin, I've used this a lot in my other videos. You'll see it come up time and time again, wider. Very nice plugin for making things sound wide without losing mono compatibility. And that's free. You can get that from Infected Mushroom. It's brilliant. Yeah, EQ, compression, limiting. So what happens? And then you've got this completely wide bass, which is actually not even, I mean, yeah, okay, it's in the bass range, isn't it? It's around about 300. It's bass to low mids, but it's completely sitting wide. Like I've run this through Microshift and it's fully wet. So if you see, if I move the mix to here, it sort of comes into the middle a bit more. Wet really moves it to the sides. And then there's some chorus on it in the synth itself, in Diva itself, to again make it feel wider. And I think I'm also pushing a return channel out to a return channel called Widener, which adds more width. It's got a copy of, like, the wider return channel is a full blast copy of Widener on it, and some chorus as well. So there's a lot of things happening there to make that feel like a very wide sound. So what we've got, if you imagine the bass now, looks a bit like a kind of almost like a triangle, with the sub is like a very mono point, and then as the bass gets higher and higher, it moves out and out in terms of its width, which just gives it this lovely sense of it being a big, like, rich wide noise, like full all-encompassing low-end noise. The nice thing about those kind of wide top-endy bits is that they cut through really well on small speakers, so you won't hear that sub on a phone or on like really cheap speakers or whatever, but you will hear those top-end basses, and it's sort of a bit of an illusion that helps your basses cut through. So all of that then goes into this processing rack, this bass processing, which you can hear really is making quite a difference. It's got a couple of different copies of raw on it. One which is doing some mid-side processing, so that's giving us some extra width. And then the other one which is just doing some multi-band processing. And to be honest with you, I think I've just been fiddling around. This has got like a tube on it. This is the mid-range is the digital one. The top end is fractals. It's just me just messing around, just seeing what sounded good. And then that's the dry signal. And finally you have a little bit more decapitator. And you can see that what I'm not doing here is adding one load of saturation on. It's like lots and lots of little layers of saturation at each stage, which is just adding gentle additional harmonics all the way through. That's how you get that full sound. If you just throw one saturator on and say that's that job done, it just won't sound as full. So add lots of little bits like this, and then you can just dial these into taste. These are hardly in there at all. It's very, very subtly in there. It's all just helping to fill out the sound, okay? And then I've EQ'd that a bit, just taking off some of the top end, just so it doesn't clash too much with what's going on elsewhere in the track. Also, this is really fun. This is a plugin called Neutron's Unmask. It's an unmask module from Neutron 4, I think. Yeah, 4. So what we've done here is we've sidechained the bass line to the lead melody. Because at times, and it's particularly like if I take you to where this bass line really jumps out, let me just pull you to this part of the track. So if I go here, so that's really occupying quite a lot of the high end. You can see how much overlap there is with the lead. This purple line is where it's starting to clash with the lead melody. So where that's happening, the low mids of the lead, and if I just the low mids, the lead, and the bass, there's a lot of overlap there. So what this is doing is just taking that out a little bit. There's actually this part here, it seems, is where the clash is really happening. It's just doing a little bit of dynamic kind of compression, dynamic EQ, just in those spots, just attenuating that signal so that the lead can continue to cut through even when I've released the cutoff of the bass line fully. So that is a really nice little touch just for space in the mix. It's really nice little detail that's just going to help the whole mix feel a little bit more coherent and not like everything's fighting for space with each other. And then there's also a little bit of soothe on there too to help with that. And some multi-band dynamics just to, particularly at this point in the track, that bass gets quite big at this point. So this just helps to slightly rein it in. We don't want it to be that big. And then limiting and all that, just a little limiter just to catch any peaks. All right, drums, bass, done. What else? We've got, let's start with the star of the show, the lead melody. This is the bit that is what everyone will remember, that needs to be right. Okay, what have we done here? So, we start with 2 editions of Diva. First one is based on a little preset called Ether, which I believe is an Audio Tent preset. Yes, it is. So here it is, Audio Tent. It's actually a bass preset called Ether. I have fiddled with it to make it work as a lead melody. fiddle with the ADSR, cut off. But to be honest with you, it's quite a simple little, saw wave. And then I'm just using lots of automation to the different decays, to the delays and so on, just to kind of give this sense of like it evolving the whole way through the track. Now, you can hear some noise on there. That's not actually coming from this sample. I've added the noise in separately. And this is, like, it's a fine touch, right? But for me, I like to control this because you can use it as a way to really bring emotion to the track. So you can hear how subtle it is here. So it's hardly there. It's almost got that kind of analog sound of it, just kind of like the old synth, the way the old synths kind of had this kind of wispy analog sound. But now I'm going to really let it go. So I'm almost using it there like an instrument, like an effects module. And I'm basically automating that using this. So I've got the volume control for that. I've just put some, the noise is just Diva, like it's just the noise module of Diva. What is that? The DCO noise. That's all it is. ADSR to control what I want that to sound like. And then I've linked that volume to one of these macros. Which one is it? So it's noise is that one there. And then that, you can see that's being controlled up here with this automation line. So that just gives us a lot of control over how we want that noise to sound. And again, that's EQ'd out in its own separate channel. The Diva instance has a bit of OTT on it, which is free and really cool to give a little bit of extra pluck. Again, you can hear. Just adds a bit of sparkle, a cleanness, and then like I do, there we go. We got a bit of decapitator on there to fill the sound out. Then we've got some like multiple effect racks. What's going on here? So we've got some more saturation. I was doing a lot of experimenting with roar here. You can see I've got the mid-side roar and the multiband roar going on, adding a lot of roar, probably not adding quite as much roar to my recent productions as I've added to this track, but it is very, very cool. And then that's the dry signal. And then in here, we have another bit of saturation. So maybe overdoing it slightly on the saturation there, but it sounds good. And that's all that matters. So then we go into this effect track, which is going to be our spatial effects. So we've got a signal here which has crystallizer and tremolator on it. So that's giving us the kind of weird reversey kind of stereo effects. You can hear if I switch that off. Pretty cool. Just adds a lot of like interest and ear candy to a synth line. And then the tremolator is just giving it a kind of a wobbly like tail, if you like. This is reverb. So I've got near verb. I've EQ'd it. I've got some side chaining. It's side chained with itself there. I'm using kickstart to that. It's audio mode. So that it side chains with itself. So that when the synth is playing, you're not hearing all this reverb. It's not washing it out. And then I'm actually side chaining that just with the kick as well. And then we've got a delay doing the same thing. Delay, sidechain to itself, EQ, then sidechain to the kick. And then we've got overall just a little bit of delay on that, a little bit of EQ on that whole signal. just to kind of tidy it up a bit once it's come through all the processing. Had a lot of spiking going on in this area on this track, so I was cutting that all the way through, trying to tame it. I think I was doing it, I think this edition of Soothe, you can see like I really tried to tame that space there, because without it, it gets a bit, see, it gets a bit kind of nasal almost. And with that in there, cleans it right up. Soothe is so powerful. Yeah, bit of compression, bit more side chaining, limiter. There we go. Another side chain on for some reason. I'm not sure why that's there. Okay, good. So that is the lead melody. That's all the processing that's on the lead melody. These lead elements, I process them individually because I don't want to have them all end up kind of mushed together. I want to have them all separate. So then we've got these. This is just a little vocal sample, I think, yeah, that I've just had playing all the way through. It's just got a bit of like processing on, some chorus, panning, delay, reverb, all that kind of stuff, just to make it sound kind of cool. And then these also. This is actually not a vocal sample. This is a little preset from a synth called Anna 2. Sonic Academy, I think. And it's called Pyro. And it's just got, it's got some sort of like vocal sample in it somewhere, but it's just, it sounded kind of cool. I just was, you know, when you filter through samples, you're like, oh, that's cool, I can use that. So if I go back to here. It does sound like a voice. It's quite amazing. But this, what this allowed me to do in the breakdown, you see, is use this as a kind of a big point here, like. It's quite anthemic sounding. And then there's a harmonic element to that. And I've added some delay, and it gives this sense of it kind of really expanding at this kind of crescendo part. Okay, and then the final piece of the leads is the alpha keys. Okay, that's some Diva, the little Diva preset. Again, bit of effect track with crystallizer on it, and a bunch of spatial effects. Dramatic there. The final bit I'll show you, I'm realizing this video is running quite long, so I'm going to speed this up. The final bit I'll show you is the Melodics. This is all the stuff that goes in the background. So we've got pads. Really subtle, just there. They're just like drones, really. Got some more drones down here. These drones, this is actually a little sample. Quite often you do this, like just find a little drone sample off Splice and then process it with loads of reverb and some spatial effects just to make it sound a bit weird. These chords. So this is what I mean about having like percussive, almost percussive melodic elements. This is what's giving me some of my rhythm all the way through the track, and it's just a little preset on Anna 2 called Expander, which I've just messed around with to make it sound a bit different. Change the... Anna 2 has a kind of a ARP built into it. Although actually, no, I don't think I used it there. This was an arpeggiated plugin, but I ended up just writing the notes in. Again, look at all the use of velocity to kind of give that melody some kind of sense of rhythm, you know? And swing as well, adding... I didn't show that in the other things. Everything's got swing on it. I've used that MPC Swing 55 all the way through the track. Everything has swing on it. So it all binds it together. And then these are kind of more like swishy pads. More Anna 2 there. I use Anna 2 quite a bit in this track. It's quite cool. It's a nice synth. One thing to show here is that there's, in the breakdown, I changed out a lot of the instruments. So we've got like this old piano that comes in to give it a sort of a slightly nostalgic feel. This is in, you can get this piano is in Ableton 12. It's called Childhood Home Piano. It's absolutely brilliant. It sounds like an old nostalgic upright piano. So cool. Add a bit of reverb. Job done. And then some strings. And then I just put in some weird sounding samples. Just to kind of build up to tension. So you've got this kind of like... Yeah, this string is just running one note. It's a real nice tip, by the way. If you want to build tension in a breakdown without necessarily going all out with like loads of fills and stuff, a single string just does it. Wonderful. And then finally, you've got a lot of these little bits here, which I've recorded this using Portal. These are all just these are parts of the track I've just put through Portal and just recorded. Portal is a kind of a effects unit from output, and it just comes up with loads of really jittery effects like this. And I've just added them all the way through the track just as kind of ear candy. Nice, isn't it? And then you've got also these swells, which I've resampled. So these are all other parts of the track that I've put a load of reverb and delay on. So that's resampled, like a note or a chord or something from another part of the track. Added a load of reverb and delay, reversed it, added some more reverb, that's a bit supermassive on that, which is from Valhalla, and then they become these kind of joining parts to help with transitioning sections across. What that means is that all of these little effects parts are actually part of the track already, so it all feels more coherent. Then I've added a few atmospheres in that I got from... These are vocal atmospheres that I got from Splice. So it's all just little layers of atmospheric stuff that gives us this nice soundscape that's always evolving. And then all of those melodic elements are run into a bus where they're being processed with this same chain again that I used before. Some raw, some effect racks, and then I'm using the unmask again to make sure. This is really important. On this Melodics, see I've used quite a lot of unmask, 22%. So that it really is... actually pretty good there. There's not a lot of clashing, but the unmask is just basically there to make sure that it doesn't clash with the lead melody and get in the way too much of the lead melody at any point. And then some filtering, a bit of soothe to stop it from sounding too harsh at any stage, compression and limiting. So that all builds up into the mix bus, where I've got a filter on just to kind of filter out some of the bass elements, like when we get to the breakdown. Don't want so much bass in there. And then I've also got easy washout, bit of bass clefs, easy washout which is this one here, which just means that when we get to the breakdown, I can add more space. Nice. So that is it. That is Reverence. That is the walkthrough. Some people often ask, what are the different levels like? I'm just going to do it at like a bus level. So if you look here, you can see that the low end is very loud. Drums a little bit quieter. This Melodics element is substantially quieter, kind of down here on the -30 mark. And then the lead melody is a little bit louder than, well, it's on a sort of not dissimilar level to the drums, maybe a bit louder than the drums. Probably push those drums up a bit more, to be fair, but it sounds good. All right. That's everything that went into Reverence. Pretty of a big one, but it's a bit of a big project. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please remember to like and subscribe to these videos. It really helps me. It helps the channel, and it means I'll make more of them. And I will see you on the next video. Thanks very much. Bye.